It is imperative for the West to show solidarity with the Iranian opposition. Now, that's according to officials with the National Union for Democracy. Joining me now to talk about this in more detail is our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, joining me from Los Angeles. Lisa, officials say it's vital to show that support, especially when Iranians' lives are being threatened both inside and outside of Iran.
Yes, absolutely. And we're seeing something tremendous coming from the Iranian people inside the country. There is a new online campaign that has gone viral. It's hashtag no, the number two IR, meaning no to the Islamic Republic. And the people of Iran are courageously speaking out. They are putting flyers on windshields and putting graffiti on walls saying no to the Islamic Republic. And a lot of them are sending me videos where they're disguising their faces in some capacity so that they're not, if they're caught, this is punishable by death. It's considered treason. It's considered turning against the government. So, courageously saying, this is not my choice. This is not my government. No to the Islamic Republic. And that's the hashtag that has gone viral with a very symbolic thumbs down. That's their logo. It's all over Twitter and it's gaining a lot of momentum, both from Iranians inside the country, the opposition outside the country, and people who just support and have been following the story of the Iranian people. All of this in the backdrop of the West, spearheaded by the Biden administration, trying to get back into an Iran nuclear deal pretty much at any cost. The optics don't look good. The Iranian government is enriching uranium, developing their ballistic missile program, gaining a lot of technology where they would have a more robust weapons program, and of course the human rights violations against women, against minorities, against pop culture artists, etc. It's just horrific, egregious. So keep your eyes on this campaign. It's a beautiful thing to watch when it's a grassroots movement like this, uniting the people for one good cause, and that's their future.
There are reports that security forces killed at least 39 people last weekend in Myanmar's main city. Lisa, that would be one of the bloodiest days of protests against the junta that seized power in that February 1st coup.
Yes, so this coup was at first it was more of shocking news. Well, the military took over, they arrested their leader, and now we just sit back and watch. Well, they cut the internet, they instated martial law to make sure people are off the streets, but that didn't last too long. They are supporters of their leader, and they will come out onto the streets very, very boldly to make their voices heard against the military, against this coup, and unfortunately, the death toll is rising. As you said, Hal, this was not very bloody. It was not very brutal at first, but now they are cracking down because they want to see an end to the protests. Both sides will get more courageous, more bold, more brazen, and of course, that means the death toll will rise, unfortunately.
Now, threats from China and North Korea loom large over the Biden administration's first cabinet-level trip abroad. Now, Lisa, is this part of a larger effort to boost U.S. influence and calm concerns about America's role in Asia?
Yes, absolutely. All reports that have recently come out, whether they've been by army generals or analysts, are talking about the obvious elephant in the room, the fact that China has really gained so much influence and power in the region, and their agenda is only to grow bigger and stronger over the next decade or so. They have extended their tentacles both physically within the neighboring countries into the neighboring sea, and they've also, in terms of their cyber capabilities, they've infiltrated the West in many, many ways. They've sent spies over in the United States. Just a few months ago, we discovered that there are interns and professors and researchers in labs at Harvard, at some of the best institutions in our country, and they have infiltrated that way. We've known for a long time, Hal, that the Chinese have been after using copycat technology and stealing our patents and stealing our technology and science, etc. But now we know that they are really on a rampage to grow bigger and stronger than ever before. They are probably the world leader at this point and on their way to becoming much farther ahead than the West. So this trip is intended to at least bring together some of those concerned parties to talk about where China is headed.
The Jerusalem Post is reporting that an Israeli woman who crossed into Syria's border earlier this year and was returned was allegedly asked by Syrian authorities to help carry out a terrorist attack against Israeli soldiers. Tell me more about that.
This is a wild, wild story. I mean, it really sounds like a movie when you read the article, and I suggest that you do read it if you're interested in this type of action flick. This woman her hobby is to just wander into enemy states, and that's exactly what she did. She took a couple of different buses, different routes, did some hiking, and ended up in Syria. As an Israeli, that is not a safe place for her to be, and of course, she was apprehended, and Syrian authorities, probably spearheaded by Bashar al-Assad's supporters, meaning the Iranian regime's uh, assets over there, asked her to become a spy and basically not just be a spy, but go back to Israel. And if she would be going back to Israel, quote unquote, safely, then she would have to carry out a terrorist attack on her own people, on soldiers, in fact. And she said, "No way, Jose, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this." And now that she's been released, she lives to tell the story. And of course, she told the Israelis that this is what happened to me. They offered me, this. She basically comes out a hero, even though she wandered into enemy territory. So, very, very interesting story.
Let's bring things a little closer to home for just a moment here. Meghan Markle is reportedly working with the Democrats and is eyeing to become the next U.S. president. I'm thinking, okay, if Ronald Reagan was an actor, he became president. Why not Meghan Markle, right?
How? Oh my good. Ambition knows no bounds, right? Give her an inch, and look, she got this primetime interview with Oprah, and now look at her. I guess the Queen didn't really squash her confidence that much because she lives to go on and on, and of course she has very, very large ambitions. If this is in fact true, this is in page 6, not on the cover of the New York Times. So perhaps we can take it with a grain of salt, or perhaps she's just hobnobbing and using her 5 minutes of fame to put out some more rumors. Who knows?
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is declining to call on New York Governor Andrew Cuomo to resign despite having zero tolerance for sexual harassment. Joe Biden also declining to call for Cuomo's resignation.
Right. Look, both of them are saying, let's wait for the probe to come out. Let's wait. I mean, there are so many witnesses here, so many victims, I should say, that have come forward. It's not just a one-off. It's not a he said, she said, but it's a she, and then he said. So, it's one thing if they were this lenient across the board and they were consistent in their leniency towards sexual harassment. But as you said, um, they have had their records show that they would ask any individual in the past. There have been many others in the Me Too movement that have come forward, and they have had a zero tolerance policy towards those types of predators. So look, we want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, but there are in fact so many scenarios, so many stories here that it's really disheartening to see Nancy Pelosi, a woman, not come to the support of these women, and to have Joe Biden, the president of this country, have basically tolerance or to defend this kind of behavior coming from Governor Cuomo. In the end, obviously, this probe will come out, and I hope the probe about the nursing home scandal comes out as well. And it's not really overshadowed by these sexual harassment cases. Both are very important, and both should really see daylight. And once they do, I hope that we can have a bipartisan look at this, just for the sake of those women and for the sake of really not just canceling Pepe Le Pew, the cartoon, but canceling predators that are Democrats or Republicans.
Or canceling a little bit of Dr. Seuss, a couple more books there too. Lisa, as of last weekend, U.S. Border Patrol was holding more than 4,200 unaccompanied migrant children in short-term holding facilities. Many look like jail cells and are really unfit to house minors.
Yeah, so, this is again looking at the reality on the ground and saying, well, now we have a Democrat president. What's he done? Where we're seeing children being put back into cages. We're seeing the horrific scenario that is really worsening by the moment at the border. Both sides blaming each other, Democrats and Republicans in this country. But the fact is, this is what's going on. And regardless of whether you're blue or red, it's a crisis. You can't have unvetted people coming into our country, especially at a time where crimes are at a high rate and coronavirus. I mean, you cannot, you can't vet these people, before letting them in by any means. Not based on their past history, not based on who they are, why they left their countries, and if they're healthy to come into this country and not bring any variants of the virus in. And that's just what it comes down to. Biden and Democrats can campaign all they want on having a very lax immigration policy, but when reality hits, we have to deal with a country that has to be kept safe first and foremost.
And a lot of these migrant kids come from many different countries across Central America, right?
Correct. It's all different kinds of places, and we know that they've been trying to be kept back. So if they're just marching north from the south, in different places like Guatemala and Honduras, there's attempts to stop them, to no avail, and they have arrived at our border, and more continue to come. Look, if the message from the border is that you can come in, you don't have to wait your turn for a visa, you don't have to wait your turn to be vetted, you can just march right in. Why wouldn't more people, it would really behoove them to come and not wait, since this moment seems like the right and opportune moment to come in without any consequence.
You know, I'm shocked at how big some of these caravans are with, tens of thousands of people. It's just incredible watching all of the migrants move from country to country to country, walking, swimming, whatever it takes to try and get away from their current conditions. Now, speaking of current conditions, pretty bizarre what's going on right now in Portland, Oregon. Police there found firearms, crowbars, hammers, even bear spray after they recently corralled a group of about 100 protesters. Are people still actually protesting the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis last May? Or maybe they're just, are they bored? Like, what's going on there?
Oh, yeah, a little bit of everything. Look, that was what ignited the catalyst, obviously, was something along the lines of BLM and George Floyd. And of course, you know, remnants of that remain. But I think, when you look at these protests and you ask these individuals what they're on the street for, I think they're in this perpetual protest mode. They're just in this state of victimhood, of just blaming and destroying, and anger. It's just a lot of anger. I do a daily top 10 email where we used to cover stories from Syria and Iraq and Erbil and Raqqa and ISIS, and now we cover almost daily protests from Portland and other places in the country where we're seeing these types of protests, because the streets of Portland seem to be much more dangerous than parts of the Middle East right now. And that's really the sad state of our nation, because we have this anger, this resentment, this division, anger at the police, anger at the government, anger at the military, and these are the people who are helping us and are protecting us and really risking their lives to save us. But it's a sad situation. You'd think by now it would have fizzled out, but it hasn't. It still has this momentum behind it. Particularly in Oregon, we have friends in Oregon who say it's horrific. It's on every corner. It's not a safe place to live or to raise children or to do business. It speaks more about the overall sentiment in the country right now. There is no unity, even though the White House may call for unity. It's a fake attempt at trying to unite both sides. And we're hoping that before more damage is done and long-term damage is done, that we can come to some sort of resolution for the future.
Now let's talk about some of the lockdowns, which has impacted the entire world, including here in North America. Here in Alberta, we've slowly been easing some of the government restrictions, allowing some restaurants to reopen and so forth, families to get together, outdoor dining on the patios in Winnipeg, Manitoba. I noticed in your country, in Texas, it seems like they've lifted a lot of the restrictions. Texas is open for business once again. What about in California?
Yeah, California slowly. Today is the first day of a new level of opening up. So we're getting some movie theaters back open, and people can dine inside restaurants for the first time, but at 25% capacity. It's been very difficult. Most businesses will not open back up. And when you drive down the main roads in my area, they're still boarded up. Many of them won't be able to open back up, regardless of they've had to pay rent and employees, and they can't go back out and risk that financially in order to open up again. It's very devastating. And regardless of what we hear in the news about opening up and about, it's been a year. And that devastation, a lot of people can't recover from. In terms of the economic devastation, the psychological. The schools still aren't open here. The LAUSD, the unions are fighting opening up. The teachers don't want to go back. And you speak to these families that have 3 and 4 kids. They cannot manage. A lot of them can't afford to have tablets and computers for each child. They can't afford the internet service that's required to have these kids on Zoom. And talk about the psychological effects on having these kids be home in front of a monitor instead of playing on the playground. So it's been a very long year, and we continue to see the devastation and the side effects here in California.
U.S. political reporter and our foreign affairs expert, Lisa Daftari, thanks again for joining me today from Los Angeles.
My pleasure.